Okay, this is an interesting process, guys, that happens in our banking system. Money multiplier. Banks create deposits when they make loans, and the new deposits create a new money. In fact, this process is going to allow for this money multiplication process to occur. My personal definition of money multiplier is this. Money multiplier is a process. Money multiplier is the multiplier expansion of a country's money supply that occur from banks being able to create new deposits as they lend the deposits that they receive. Okay? I'll show you the process. Then you will better understand what I mean by money multiplier here. Okay. The size of the multiplier effect depends on what we call reserve ratio. Let's use capital R. Reserve ratio. Percentage of deposits that banks choose to hold as reserves. You see, guys, when banks receive deposits, they will hold certain percent as their receipts. Okay? See, guys, when people deposit their money with the bank, with the commercial banks, they're not going to lend out all those deposits. They will put certain portion as reserves. Are you with me? Banks cannot lend out all of the deposits received because on any given day, some customers would need to withdraw their deposits. On any given day, some customers would come and they would want to withdraw their deposits. Okay? So suppose for simplicity, guys, all banks are holding 10% reserve ratio. That means, what is the lending ratio? 90%. Right? So they receive their deposits, they put 10% as their reserve, then they will make loans with that 90%. Is that okay? All right. The formula for money multiplier, or to be more specific, guys, this is the simplest version of money multiplier. Let's call that simple money multiplier is equal to 1 divided by R. Okay, remember, R is the reserve ratio. So, if R equals to 10%, the money multiplier will be 1 divided by 10%. 1 divided by 0.10 is equal to 10. That is to say, assuming all the banks have reserve ratio of 10%, when a bank initially receives $10 deposit, or if you want to talk about this in terms of millions, 10 million deposits, you can do so. When a bank initially receives 10, eventually through the money multiplication process, the money multiplier process, the money supply in the banking system will expand to, from 10, it will expand to 100. How did I get 100? Okay. If R is equal to 10%, what is the money multiplier effect? That will be equal to 10. All right. So if you do 10 times the initial deposit of $10, then you get your $100. Okay, let's spend a bit of moment here to try to digest this. Okay, Tommy, show me the logic of this. From 10 becomes 100 if R is equal to 10%. That follows through to money multiplier being times 10, right? Okay, money multiplier effect. How? How does the process happen? If, for example, the R is equal to 10%, for every $10 a customer deposits into a bank, so what is the bank going to do, guys, with the $10 deposit? The bank will put aside $1 as reserve, right? But the remaining 90%, what is 90% of $10? $9 can be loaned out to other bank customers. Alright? This $9 that is loaned out to other banks customers will then be deposited by these customers into another bank. Alright? So in the first round, you got initial deposit of $10, but through the lending process there, in the second round, that new deposit of $9 is created in the system. Yes or no? Then the process follows. $9, the bank will put aside 10% of that. 10% of $9 is 0.9 in the reserve. But it will then lend out the remaining $8.1 that will become new deposit in the system. The cycle continues as more people deposit money and more banks continue lending it. Until finally, what's going to happen? The $10 initially deposit creates a total of $100. $10 times 10 in the system. This creation of deposits is effectively the multiplier effect. And what I've done here, guys, to better clarify this money multiplication process, this money multiplier effect, I did this simple Excel spreadsheet. Assume all the banks are holding 10% reserve ratio. That means lending ratio is 90%, right? If you have $10 deposit, the initial deposit is $10. What is going to happen, guys? The bank will put aside $1. Okay, and $9 become lending to someone else that will be deposited into his bank. So $9 deposit is going to be created in the second round. $9, then we put aside, or the bank put aside 10% of that, right? So that means $8.1 is going to be lent out to another customers that will deposit that money into his bank. So a new deposit of 8.1 is created on that round, in that round. Okay, then I do the automation in my Excel spreadsheet. Yes, until it's all exhausted to 0. If we sum up all of this, you will get 100. From an initial deposit of 10, then we have this money multiplier effect that will lead into money supply in the economy increase not just by 10 but 100. So, okay, Okay, let me ask you this question, guys. Just say if the reserve ratio goes up to 20%, if the reserve ratio goes up to 20%, do you think the money multiplier effect is going to be stronger or weaker? If the reserve ratio goes up to 20%, the money multiplier effect will be weaker, right? See, if R is 20%, that means 1 divided by 20%, 1 divided by 0.2 is equal to 5. Okay? That makes sense, guys. If the commercial banks are holding more money in their reserves, that means less lending happens in the system. Yes or no? So effectively, this money multiplier effect is going to become weaker as reserve ratio goes up. Okay? You know, guys, the money multiplier effect that I just explained to you is the simplest form of the money multiplier effect. In practice, the calculation of the money multiplier is more complex. Other factors, such as the desired currency holding, currency drain ratio, as well as the variation in reserve ratio among banks. Remember, guys, we assumed before the reserve ratio is 10% across the board, right? Across all the commercial banks, but of course, there could be variation in the reserve ratio among banks. You know, all these factors will influence the money multiplier, okay? So that's why in practice, the calculation of money multiplier is more complex, okay? But in this introductory course in economics, let's start with the simple multiplier. I hope you can appreciate that, and I hope you found that quite interesting.